existing speaking skills, and to introduce himself to fellow club members. Owen's speech will last between 4 and 6 minutes and is entitled Anyone's Unanswered Questions. So with his speech entitled Any Unanswered Questions, please welcome Owen Morley.
Thank you, Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters and most welcome guests. I stand here before you this evening full of questions. I don't mean about the meeting tonight, or even about today. Life, I found, poses a series of questions. Most of them are actually unanswerable. For instance, why are we here? How are we here? How have we evolved so much that we can ask ourselves these questions? And it's questions that others may find different, such as if you have knees on the back of your legs, what would chairs look like? Or why is abbreviation such a long word? Politicians are often accused of unanswering questions or not answering questions, but I think we should give them some credit, because life would be very boring if there was an answer to every question. I think that being able to ask questions is just as important as being able to answer them. Before we go any further, I'm going to play a little game which will maybe help you pose a few questions about me. I'm going to tell you 3 facts about myself. 2 of them are true and 1 of them is false. The first one is that I'm related to the Queen. The second fact is that I've spent some time in prison. And the third fact is I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, and I'll tell you at the end what the false one is. I got the idea for the main part of my speech from a seminar that I had a few weeks ago at work, where instead of the usual, where the chairperson usually goes around the room asking people what their name is and what job they do, she asked a series of questions which actually were different and made people think. And for people you'd never met before, which is this case, it actually made people a lot more open. So the first one that we were asked was, what angers you? Now, obviously that's quite an open question. War and famine tend to anger me quite a bit, but I actually get more irate about local issues like petrol prices or pubs closing down. A few months ago, where I lived before, our local pub on my street was shut down and turned into flats. And I remember being really angry about this. We lost the community and all that kind of thing. So I looked into it a bit and I found out that 7 pubs were closing every day in the UK. So over 2,500 a year. And for someone who likes his beer and his pubs, this was a shocking statistic. However, I do like to look on the bright side. And I found out there are 55,000 pubs still left in the UK, which I worked out if I was to live to the age of 80, that means 3 pubs every day. So best memory, the next question was best memory you have of childhood. And the best memory I have is when my sister was born. I wasn't actually there at the birth, but when she was a very small baby. There were quite a few years between me and my sister for reasons I've never actually found out properly. But I was 9 when she was born. So I remember going to the hospital and seeing her very small and holding her for the first time. And I was only 9, so I remember being taken out of school. It happened overnight. But she's now 20 and at university and plays hockey for the county. So it just shows you how things change. Next question we were asked was, what fascinates you? One of the things that fascinates me is languages. I speak French and I've dabbled in Russian, Japanese, Italian, Welsh, Latin, sign language. I think that's it. But so when I moved to Scotland from Gloucester, I was intrigued to see how Scots use language differently. And one of the words I noticed that was used quite a lot is out with, which I'd never heard before. before I moved to Scotland. And I think Scots are quite surprised by that because it's used quite a lot. But I thought I was going a bit mad because I kept seeing it on like emails and going, I'm sure I haven't seen that word before. And fizzy juice as well, for fizzy drink. I've never come across that term before. And the other thing that confused me up here was people were saying, where do you stay? Which I'd never heard used in that expression, where do you stay? Where do you live is what it means, but where do you stay is a temporary thing. I'm like, I don't stay, I live here. So you see, I took a few months to adjust. The other thing that fascinates me is weird buildings, like windmills and lighthouses and castles. I'd love to live in a windmill. I know it's a strange thing, but there's a hotel in Norfolk you can go to where you actually stay in a working windmill. And I remember going when I was like 15 or 16, I was absolutely fascinated by this thing. And ever since then, I've always wanted to live in a windmill. So that's that. If you could go back in time, when would you go back to? This is quite an easy one, because I've always thought, music-wise, I was born 10 years too late. So I would go back to the mid-80s, when I was about 13, 14, when some of the cheesy rock bands were starting to come through. I think I'd quite enjoy that. Right, I think I've run out of time for questions. So, which fact about me wasn't true? Well, I've never climbed Kilimanjaro, but I'd really like to. I am a distant relative to Queen, but I've never been asked to any kind of royal events, so I'm not sure whether that counts. And I told a bit of a fib, because although I did spend some time in prison, I wasn't actually an inmate. I was working in prison for 3 years. So you can all breathe a sigh of relief. And now so can I, because my speech is over. Thank you very much.